APCALP, Petaluma, California.
Happy Friday.
Hey, guess what, Jim?
What?
It must be two Mooks.
I didn't hear the music, though. What was that about?
I don't know. Where is it? There it is. Hey.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Wait. All right. Well, you can talk over the music for a little bit.
All right. That's enough of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Another smooth intro into
Whoa.
our weekly show.
That's unusual, man. I've never seen you panic behind the board before, but you're pushing every button in sight.
I don't know what
buttons.
happened there, really.
That's for sure. Anyway, we're live. We're live.
We're live. Well, it's good to be back in the studio, Jim. Hello, Petaluma. This is Two Mooks and a Mic. That's Jim Thomas over there, your co-host.
And over there's the co-host, Matt McGuire, who's back from assignment, everybody. If you remember last week, he was gone. So we'll find out later where he went and what his experience was.
And, right? Jim, thanks for carrying the show last week. You had an
welcome.
interesting interview with John Crowley and Val Richmond.
Really good. There seems to be a really nice movement happening, a very positive thing, which may not be unique for Petaluma, but it certainly is wonderful that it's happening here, and people are really responsive about that.
Yeah, organic convergence, I think they were calling it, right?
Just calling it the convergence.
The convergence, participated in that some months ago.
Bigger and bigger
Well,
and bigger.
we need those kinds of programs because, of
balance.
course, it's really been just as ugly as it can be.
It's getting worse, man.
You know, this is our cross to bear, Jim. Every week we keep saying, how can it get worse?
Bear.
And that rat screwer in the White House just keeps, fomenting more hatred, bigotry, racism.
Yeah.
So, in the 2 weeks we've been gone, we saw the mad bomber, sending pipe bombs to about a dozen.
At least 11,
Democrats and liberals.
That's right.
We saw the slaughter of 11 Jewish people and injury of many more at the
most killed
synagogue.
The most Jews killed in the history of the United States on the United States soil. Just a horrible thing.
Yeah, and you had a guy just randomly shoot a couple of black people shopping in the Kroger grocery store.
Right, because he couldn't get into a black church. The doors were locked, and he couldn't get in, so he just went. Oh, and he was confronted by a white shopper there, and the white person said, put down your gun. The guy says, I won't shoot. Whites don't shoot whites.
Don't shoot me. We won't shoot each other. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But the guy did fire on him and chased him off.
Now, the nuts have always been here, right?
Yeah, but, this is sickening. And, and Trump, when confronted with his vile, racist, poisonous language, is like, blames the press, blames the Democrats, blames anybody but himself. And, and then he goes to one of his, little dog and pony shows, one of his campaign-style rallies in some backwater of the country.
Campaign rally.
And he's, and he's going, look at me, we're being nice, ha, 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 smirk.
Yeah, you like this, don't you? And they all are screaming no, and then they all chant lock her up.
Yeah,
he's just horrible.
The cause and effect is clear to any rational, intelligent person.
Yeah, of course he doesn't say that, and this has been going on ever since the beginning with him.
Yeah. I mean, that's how he got elected.
Right, even before with Obama and the birth certificate thing, the birther thing.
Yeah.
Right, all that.
But here he is. So we're on the eve of the elections. Yeah. It's next Tuesday, of course. That's no surprise to anybody.
A few days away.
But, here, in the meantime, the Republicans have nothing to offer to the public.
No, except fear and fear-mongering and terror.
They don't have anything real in health care. They've tried to destroy the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
They lie through their teeth about, we'll protect your pre-existing conditions. No, you won't. You're only doing that because you'll completely lose if you don't lie through your teeth about it.
But Matt,
you'll fool a few people.
What about the great tax cuts that it's all going to benefit
everybody? Tax cuts, the billionaire giveaway, billions to billionaires. And now, of course, Trump then says, I'm going to pass a 10% middle-class tax cut. It'll be great. It'll be huge. It'll be
big. Before the elections.
That's right. You're going to get it before the election. Everybody's going, what are you talking about? You're talking out your butt. The Congress isn't even in session.
That's an image.
That's
right. Yeah.
And there's no way he could. There was no discussion beforehand about this. Is just one of its mouthings off.
Right. And what about the tariffs? There's wonderful tariffs that are hurting, of course, soybean farmers in the Midwest.
Yeah, Harley Davidson.
Harley
Davidson doesn't want to talk about it.
No. And these people are still going to vote for Trump. They think the economy's still doing great.
The core crazed, mostly rural, but clearly bigoted and fearful.
Fearful. That's the word I want.
And
fearful.
Angry people who really don't understand how government works from the local level to the national level.
Angry about what, Matt? Because they
I understand the anger.
heard.
I understand the anger.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, people know that the economy is rigged. It's rigged for billionaires and corporations. Look at the tax cut.
Okay.
The Republicans constantly say, "Oh, we're looking out for the little man."
Little guy, right?
And then they turn right around and stab them and squeeze the juice out of them to make their rich donors richer.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's one reason they're angry. Now, some of them are angry because old white guys, we resemble them, but we're not like these old white guys, are really angry because they feel like they're losing both status and stature and power in the socioeconomic picture.
And also because more people are coming in that don't look like
right.
them.
Yeah, they're afraid that they're
us.
losing that majority.
Right.
Yeah, so what it is that they think that because other people do well, that it's a zero-sum game and they're then doing less well themselves. Right, so I understand the anger.
I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous. It's non-rational.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a citizen in a democracy, you need to be a good citizen.
Thank you.
Now, maybe
Good
they don't
for all,
teach
right,
that.
Matt?
Yeah, exactly. You need to support our democratic principles.
Like Measure M for Parks for All.
Yeah, that's a little bit of off the point.
No, seriously. No, it's
well,
not.
Parks
it's
for
not.
All, it's true.
Right. It's for
but I was
the
thinking,
good of everybody.
I was thinking more on the national level.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, all local politics is national, right? Or all politics. All politics is local.
All politics is personal too.
Matt, you know what? This is the death throes of the white male patriarchy. This is what's happening, and it's not. They're not going quietly, and they're not going easily.
Well, I hope it is.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
I hope it is the death throes, and it is going to happen because
no matter what we
the
do.
human spirit always seeks the greatest freedom and liberty.
Just like water seeks its own level, Matt.
That's right, Jim. But it's like we've seen fascist movements in the past,
all failed,
and they have ultimately all failed. Now, that's not to say that somebody with technology and military might and money can't find a way to impose a fascist regime and make it stick for a long, 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 long time.
Well,
we could be staring down the barrel of that gun right now.
I guess you could look back at the Roman Empire that lasted for a long, 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 long time, or Egypt with the Pharaonic empires, or even China with the emperors of China.
However, now, today, you've got the internet. You've got Facebook.
There you go.
You've got face recognition.
You've got plane travel, which can make the globe a lot smaller. Right?
You've got tons of different technical and technological forces at play here that never played before.
Yeah,
very different.
So it's interesting, and in a kind of macabre sort of way, how people are trying to hang on to this old way of thinking, this old style of government that's not working anymore.
Well, the old style of government. You mean democracy?
No. No. I mean.
Let's hope that's not what you're saying.
No, I'm not. I mean the patriarchy.
The patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So right.
Yeah. Well, so it's true. I mean, and those the old white guys who have been at the core of that power structure are definitely doing everything possible they can to hold on to it.
Yeah.
We see the gerrymandering. We see the voter suppression.
We see the
lying through their teeth about the actual demonstrable facts. You just go on and on.
That's right.
And it's gotten so extreme. I mean, I'm 66 years old.
Wow.
And my dad ran for city council, I think, when I was about 4 years old. So I grew up in a political family. I've been watching this stuff my whole life.
Okay, so
it has never been this obscene. It has never been this extreme.
And you're not the only person saying that. I mean, that's across the board. People are saying this. They're shocked by what's happening. And it's like nothing really surprises you anymore. It's still a little bit shocking to me.
It is. Well, and we should not become
complacent.
Or we should not become inured to each new crisis. We should and even though it's tough, to respond and go, wow, this is another really bad, scary thing. What do I do? You still have to, be ready to defend your democracy, step up, vote, talk, share information, spread the truth.
And this is where I think Two Mooks and a Mic is really good, Matt, because we try to look at these things that are happening and shine a little light on them. And you're really good at getting the analysis of what's happening, the background story, which I think our listeners, hopefully they really appreciate that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, and
as long as we're educated about this stuff, we're forearmed, all right?
It does help. Yes, exactly. It does
help. Like the whole thing of the voter guide, it helped.
That's right. Yeah. So, which has been interesting. That my voter guide got posted on Nextdoor and generated a lot of interesting conversation and some couple scurrilous comments.
But that's okay. That's part of democracy, right?
Yeah. It's like the The sad thing is it's hard to respond to ignorant comments with education so that people really understand,
Right,
because
they
what's
think
going
you're talking down to them, and et cetera.
Well, or they just don't want to hear it.
Or
too,
they don't want to
so.
hear it. Sure, they're out of their comfort
But
zone.
the most despicable thing going on now is this whole Trump's reaction to the Honduran caravan of desperate people. Now, these are people, of course, who are fleeing their country. They don't want to leave. They don't want to leave their families, their homes. They are forced to because they are either under threat of death from violence. Right. Paramilitaries, militaries,
drug gangs,
corrupt governments, drug gangs,
lack of work,
and so it's like
abject poverty.
Exactly.
Hunger.
So and what's interesting, one interesting fact that's surfaced recently is that a lot of these caravans, which have been happening every year for years, people gather in caravans to come north.
Don't hear about that, do we?
For safety's sake in number.
Right.
But what happens is that they reach a peak and then they diminish before they get to the southern border of the United States.
Yeah,
so
a little bit.
Mexico is absorbing a lot of people, people, and so it's interesting. But Trump's reaction is just like xenophobic. He's like a screaming, hysteric granny who thinks the Fuller Brush man at the door is a horde of invading rapists.
Wow, that's quite an analogy.
Well, I mean, look at what he's doing. I mean, this guy's foaming at the mouth. Here are these people. They're still 1,000 miles away from the border.
On foot.
They're not going to get here for a couple weeks, if that. Right. And he wants to send up to 15,000 troops, our troops, armed to the teeth with all the military might and technology that our U.S. military has, and confront these poor, desperate, unfortunate people. Yeah. I mean, it just makes him look sick.
So, Matt,
just think how the world looks at it.
So this is finally Trump gets his military parade. I mean, this basically is what it is. And he's playing with his toy soldiers.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
What
he's strutting his strongman style, But here's a really unpleasant thought. He's saying that if anybody throws rocks, like they did at the Mexican police on the southern Mexican border, to treat those like they're rifles. Basically saying he wants our military to shoot innocent, unarmed, desperate people.
That is murder.
What does it remind you of?
Well, it reminds me of the strike breaking that happened in our past, in the 30s, I believe it was, where they actually shot people who were striking. Yeah. They tried to bust the unions, but with violence.
Well,
what does it remind you of?
It reminds me of the Palestinians in Gaza, where they protest at the border because they're basically locked up in a huge outdoor prison, and they're being starved, and their sewer treatment plants don't work, and their water is cut off, and they only get electricity a few hours a day, and so they go protest. Yeah. And so the Israeli army is just murdering, shooting them by the hundreds.
And Trump admires Netanyahu, so this is taking a page from his book.
Trump and Netanyahu, two of a kind, and wouldn't Trump love to see some innocent bloodshed down on our southern border so he could feel like he's Mr. Powerful?
Also, Matt, what I'm worried about are the vigilantes who are down on the border.
Oh, yeah.
With their four-wheel drive pickup trucks and their high-powered rifles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
helping the Border Patrol, in quotes, helping the Border Patrol.
Another sick facet of some of American male aggression.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, Matt, before we get off this subject, years ago when I was teaching 7th grade, there was a book that I really liked. It's called Grab Hands and Run.
Yeah.
And it took place in South America. And it was the mother's admonition to her children that if the father doesn't return, the father said to the mother to tell the children, grab hands, hold hands, and run north to El Norte, to America, because of the terrorists that were, the military that was coming for them. And sure enough, that's what happened. The book is about their travels through the different countries.
That was a country. The people were from what country?
It's Central America. I don't remember. Okay. But anyway, it's grab hands and run. So this is something that's not new. This is something that America has always been a safe haven for people who are oppressed.
Well,
and it should be.
Once again, both U.S. and international law say that people can come here and apply for asylum.
Right.
And guess what? They don't have to come to a legal port of entry. They can cross illegally and still legally apply for asylum.
So this is like the people coming from Cuba, as long as they have a foot on the beach,
on the American land.
That's right.
That's
then they have to be considered for asylum.
Yeah.
But if they're picked up in the water, then they can be sent back. So
exactly.
That's a similar idea.
That's what the law says.
Love that.
So Trump, who's now saying he wants to shut the border to all people, is once again proposing something illegal. Well, look at this. Just in the last couple of weeks, the things he's proposing that are illegal. So using the military for domestic purposes, that's illegal. Shutting the border completely, that's illegal. He's saying that he wants to build massive tent cities and catch but not release is his term, and just put people in jail.
Which he's already doing with the children.
Yeah, I mean,
concentration camps for kids.
He wants to claim that by executive order he can end the 14th Amendment, which says anybody born in the country is a citizen, and that he would end that birthright by his executive order.
And that 14th Amendment happened because of the Dred Scott decision.
That's right, which led to the Civil War.
Correct. So it's
Dred Scott said that slaves were not citizens.
Dred Scott was a Supreme Court justice, and a man had his slave escape, and he was picked up in a free state. And Dred Scott, the judge said, nope, Dred Scott is still a slave. Even though he's picked up in a free state, he must be returned.
So after the war, that was the 14th Amendment. And it just clearly says any person born here. And so Trump is like, oh, well, if Obama could give the dreamers access through executive order, then I can end birthright. And it's like, no, you can't. You're just a lying sack of manure.
The nice thing, Matt, about this, the only good side about this is there are people are watching this and people are ready to go to court over this. I certainly hope so. I haven't heard any reaction yet, but right now all I'm hearing is can he do this with remove the 14th Amendment through executive fiat?
Well, even Paul Ryan, that reactionary right-wing nut job, says, no, you can't do that.
Which is kind of nice because now the Republicans are seen to be factious because they're fighting among Trump and Ryan are fighting. Because basically Trump says he doesn't know what he's talking about as far as the Constitution goes.
Yeah, and that Ryan should be focusing on, keeping the majority in Congress. Well, right. Which is what Trump is doing. I mean, the guy is shrewd. In his sick little mind, he is shrewd.
He is shrewd.
Because what he's doing is keeping his dedicated base,
fired up
and fomenting.
Kind of like us.
By just distracting them from the fact that the Republicans have nothing to offer.
They don't have anything. It's all just paper tigers. There's nothing there.
Yeah. So I mean, they screwed the pooch on the middle class tax returns, tax breaks,
that's right? Yeah.
And they don't have anything, and they tried for years to destroy the Affordable Care Act and had nothing ever to offer with it. This is the first year that the Affordable Care Act is going to be that there is no penalty for not signing up.
Which is not a good idea because the whole idea of ACA was to get people who are healthy to pay into it to pay for the people who were sick.
Exactly.
And
so
Trump is saying no, that they don't have to do that anymore.
That's right. And so the open enrollment just started, I think, yesterday. This is the ACA's 6th year. They are only giving 6 weeks for open enrollment.
Used to be 12.
Used to be 12.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's the first year without penalties, and it's the first year that the Republican health care plans, which are going to be available, and these are the quote-unquote more affordable choice, which are plans that lack the minimum care requirements that the ACA set out, which included pre-existing conditions.
So they want to get rid of that if possible.
They're doing their best to get rid of that. Now, there's also there's going to be no subsidies to the insurance companies for the discounts they give to low-income people that the ACA called for.
So there's no incentive for the insurance companies to do this?
Although the insurance companies did plan ahead and built in their structure, apparently, so they are not abandoning the marketplace. Guess what? Insurance companies are finding ways to make money here, nonetheless, right?
That's right.
And it's the first year that there's no government support for the nonprofits, so-called navigators, that were the organizations that would help people find what's the most appropriate.
So in other words, you're on your own.
Yeah, exactly. So you get no help. Or maybe there's some NGOs out there still going to help, but they're not getting any help from the government. So this is going to have a negative impact on who is covered. And of course, a country is not stronger when people are uninsured. A country is not better off.
Right.
A country is not great when it leaves people uncovered and with no health care.
Yeah. But the GOP candidates are warding off Democratic attacks by recasting themselves, I should say, as stalwart defenders of the ACA.
Yeah.
The most popular provision prohibiting insurers from discriminating against patients with pre-existing conditions. But it's not true.
No.
Republicans will find themselves defending Obamacare eventually, while Democrats push even more. They want Medicare for all.
Yeah.
So eventually, that's what this prediction is, that the Republicans will say, no, we like ACA as long as we don't have Medicare for all, because that's, of course, the big S word, socialism.
Which they don't really like, because they spent 6 years now 8 years trying to destroy it, right?
Right, but they said even conservative states that rejected Obamacare's expansion of Medicaid, the public now supports the expansion 56% to 37%. Pretty nice, huh?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, so like I say, we're on the eve of the election, and it's pretty scary because even though we hope and pray and cross our fingers for a blue wave, like take, for instance, both the Florida and Wisconsin governor's races, they are neck and neck. But both of those states are states where there is a lot of gerrymandering and voter suppression.
Keeping the voters away.
Exactly. So, will there be enough turnout to overcome the nefarious and sleazy efforts on the Republican Party?
I don't know. They say that 72% of Democrats say they have high interest in the upcoming election, compared with 68% of Republicans. They're saying in this little article I'm reading that the Republicans, they're getting closer in interest. Meanwhile, President Trump's popularity in aggregate polls has ticked up to about 44%. The Democratic margin in many swing House districts is just a few points, and Democrats have fallen behind in Senate races. The question is no longer the size of the Democratic wave, it's whether there will be a wave at all.
See, that's
depressing.
That's depressing. On the other hand, check this out, Jim.
Okay.
There's reports that Trump is actually alienating many of the suburban voters that Republicans have long
fan my brow.
Long counted on as a major block of support.
That's right. Good.
Now, and particularly college-educated white women. And Trump's racist bigotry and vile, venomous talk has really started to turn a lot of people off.
I like that.
This whole this is an invasion message.
Right.
People see right through that. They're not stupid. For instance, there's college-educated white women now prefer that Democrats take control of Congress by 18%.
That's fantastic.
On average.
That's fantastic. Yeah, good.
And Trump's support by independents, who were a big bloc who helped him get elected, has slipped massively since he was elected. And check this out. Ted Cruz's allies say that it hurt him when Trump came last month to stump for Cruz in Houston.
Matt, you mean that people are getting woke to
because
President Trump?
It turns off moderate voters.
Yes, absolutely.
In Texas, and even Texas is changing. It's demographics.
There we go. I have something here that says Trump is still unpopular overall, which means trouble for the GOP. Of the last 17 presidents, 7 have had approval ratings at or below where Trump is going into the midterm elections. All of them suffered substantial losses. The Senate map has always favored Republicans, but saving the House is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I don't know. I just don't want to believe any polls. Remember, they're just the snapshot, boys and girls. It's not a predictor at all.
Yeah. But, you have to, everybody's always looking at those numbers to see what's going to go on.
Well, you have to. I mean, we want to know the future. And at 538, I don't know whether to go there anymore, because after Trump's election, it's just,
so the point is, folks, listeners, get up, make sure you vote. If you haven't voted, vote, make sure you are voting on Tuesday.
Do that Tuesday. Or you can also go early. You can go to early voting. You can go up in Santa Rosa. I took my wife up there to do that, because we're not going to be here on the 6th.
Yeah.
So she got her ballot in, no problem. With your guide, it helped a lot.
Yeah.
So you can still do that early here in California, which is great.
Yeah. So
nice drive up to Santa Rosa.
That's critical. And so you mentioned earlier when I was on assignment last week.
Yeah. Where'd you go, Matt?
We went to Arizona. Went to see the Grand Canyon, which was lovely.
Did you see Jan Brewer?
I didn't see Jan Brewer.
That's probably good. The Grand Canyon would be a better thing. Now let's have some really bad jokes. We can say it's still a good crack.
Oh, man.
Anyway, it's still there, right?
Yeah, it's still there.
All right.
Well, and it's interesting because, of course, we went to visit my wife's relatives, and they are very conservative.
That must have been eye-opening.
Her sister and her sister's husband are Trumpian.
Yeah. Oh, my
Everybody
gosh.
was civil. We had a nice visit and did not talk politics, but it's funny to contemplate because, of course, the geology of the Grand Canyon, when you look down at the rocks down there and the formation of the rocks at the bottom of the canyon, those rocks are 2 billion years old.
I thought that
billion.
the Republicans say it's only like 5,000 years old.
Well, the Earth is only 7,000 years.
Oh, seven.
Maybe they
7,000.
just fell off the truck 7,000 years ago. The turnip truck, and they
2
just
billion billion with a B.
Yeah. I mean, it's just and
These
it's
suckers are old.
Yeah, it's very impressive, you know, and beautiful. So that part was great. But then, visiting in deep red state, northern Arizona.
Except for the humans, Arizona's beautiful.
Yeah, that part was pretty freaky. We're driving along, and the bumper stickers you see are like "not a liberal" or
really
Trump.
Wow.
Or a lot of campaign signs, but you could just kind of tell it's like, no one, 127, protect seniors, protect taxpayers. It turns out, that's, I forget if that's the right number, but it's a clean energy bill to get the Arizona utilities to produce more of their power from wind and solar.
Yes, that sounds good.
It sounds great, and it's the right thing to do.
But they're against it.
But they're against it because, the Arizona utilities, very conservative, have fought mandates for clean energy every step of the way because they're too busy making money burning old coal and gas.
And it would cost money to develop and it would cost money to install these new things and to shut down the plants, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera, et cetera.
So they're not seeing the long run.
They're not. We all know that, the solar industry now employs 3 times what the coal industry employs.
And the energy generated by solar and wind is getting very close to the cost of oil,
and if you count
externalized
costs, it's more
efficient.
More efficient,
That's
cheaper.
Great. And they keep developing it. I mean, I was reading an article on the windmills. They're getting taller. They're going to stick them up higher where the wind blows more steadily.
Yeah.
And the blades are going to be longer.
Fewer birds up there, too.
Fewer birds up there, correct. So they won't endanger them, and which means that they can generate power 24/7, which is pretty exciting. And out in the ocean.
That's right, yeah.
Off the coasts.
So there's much going on in the clean energy.
Much going on. It's glad to hear that.
But being surrounded by people that, it's like in some of those places, they don't even recycle. And it doesn't, there's not even a place you can take recycling as far as I could tell. And, we didn't, now,
so
granted, we didn't watch TV or have TV news on.
Fox, I'm sure.
But listening to the radio, every third station was like a religious station. And, sanctimonious, sappy, holier than thou, bunch of crap that the
patriarchy again.
You just couldn't get away from that. And then then what news you'd hear was on the occasional NPR station, and they would cover something like the mad bomber, the right wing bomber in Florida, with like a 40-second news blip.
Just a little.
So
aside.
I think it's a place where you could easily have your head buried in the sand and have not a clue what's really going on. But you know what I think, Jim?
What's that?
I think in the long run, those people they're gonna be shocked when our race is gone off the cliff and there's no turning back, and the weather has turned catastrophic and the food supplies disappeared and there's no more water. They're going to be going, what happened?
We'll have their eyes wide shut. Well, Matt, I tell you, when all that happens, I'll be surprised because hopefully I'm a little bit more woke than those people.
Hopefully
you too.
Well, you won't be surprised
because I'll be dead.
No, you'll be watching.
I will be watching, but I'll still be not surprised, but more dismayed that it actually came to pass.
Yes. Well, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we've got about 12 years to really stop producing all the carbon pollution we are producing every day today, the millions of tons.
And that's just to pause it, right? To stop it. I mean, it's not to reverse anything.
Exactly, because and if that would be to get to the target 1.5 degrees centigrade limit that the Paris Accord said we need to do to avoid the worst catastrophic results and
already
disastrous changes on the Earth.
Everybody knows. There's a little-known island in Hawaii that's now underwater.
It's
gone.
Yeah. It got swept away by a hurricane and
a hurricane, and the waters are rising.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Matt. So one of the things I have here is that it's a good week for natural lighting after China announces plans to launch an artificial moon into orbit above the city of Chengdu in 2020. The satellite will have a reflective coating that will direct the sun's rays down onto the city at night, making street lights unnecessary. And you and I were talking a little bit before that, and we're like, wait a minute, will that be good or bad? It'd be bad for people who are trying to sleep, perhaps, but also What about the nocturnal animals?
Yeah. What about the birds that migrate? And
right.
What about, and even trees are impacted by street lights.
Overstory. Read the book Overstory. Yes, and also humans, our circadian rhythm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, man, it's going to be a mess. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm curious about it.
I think that brings up that word we were discussing earlier.
What's that?
Hubris.
That.
All right.
Yes, that's right. Good old Hugh and his bris.
Yeah, that's right.
Glad he had it.
God, a moon, a perennial moon to cast enough light to eliminate streetlights. It's going to have to be pretty bright.
Pretty bright. And I wonder, will there be UV rays because it's a direct reflection of the sun?
Yeah. So
so is the moon, but it doesn't.
So you watch out, don't get a moon burn.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Don't show your moon to get a burn.
Yeah. Oh, my word.
All right, we're moving on.
All right, so Jim, the European Union Parliament has banned single-use plastics.
Yes,
for the most part. As you know, there's almost as much plastic by weight in the oceans now as seafood.
Disgusting.
It will actually surpass the fish by weight by 2050.
I can't believe it.
Right?
So you're going to say, what type of plastic do you want for dinner?
Yeah. So, well, that's funny you mentioned that. Now, this is going to ban by 2021 all plastic plates, straws, flatware, cotton swab sticks, 90% of beverage bottles. And then, like other packaging, they'll reduce to 25%. But the plastic damage they estimate is going to cost 22 billion euros by the year 2030.
Wow.
So that's 12 years. $22 billion. They said 80% of marine litter on the European beaches is plastic, and 90% of the plastic ends up in the ocean. And they found that 73% of deep sea fish had plastics, microplastics in them. And now they're finding it in people's stools. So you eat seafood, it's got plastic in it, you're eating plastic.
Great.
Yep. So,
wow. It reminds me of years ago when Grace Slick of the Jefferson Airplane Hent and also the Starship said, have you ever thought that the preservatives that you eat are actually preserving you? Well, we're turning into plastic, man.
Except they don't preserve you, they give you cancer.
Oh, nice.
But what's nice was that the vote at the European Union was 571 to 53, so it was very strong support.
Good.
Yeah.
And I ran across an article, this is from Plastic Road. It says, the Plastic Road is a road based on recycled plastic. It is prefabricated and features a hollow space that can be used for various purposes, probably like maybe drainage of liquids or also running cable, perhaps. This includes water storage, transit of cables and pipes, heating roads, generating energy, etc. The plastic road elements allow for circular reuse. So maybe that's a solution to it. I don't know. As you pointed out, when that breaks down, they'll still be stuck with plastic. But,
right? it's a longer use. And
it's recyclable. You can maybe grind it up and put it back again.
Yeah, sequestered. The thing is that the problem is, I think, with vehicles running over it, you create more plastic dust.
That's
it's
right.
like the microbeads in the ocean and stuff. And then
you inhale it.
Really, I mean, we need to stop making plastic so much. I mean, there's some things you have to use it for, some tools and instruments.
Well,
and
like
stuff.
in hospitals and things like that. Yeah.
But I mean, we really just have to get away from
plastic on my knee. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Straws and things like that. Just one use, as you pointed out.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about the elections, so Trump. Trump was campaigning in Nevada for Senator Dean Heller, the Republican.
Dirty
Dean. He's a rat SOB. So turns out, for a long time under the previous Republican administrations, that there was a plan to create the Yucca Mountain nuclear waste storage facility
where they put
in
all the
Nevada.
Nuclear waste in under the ground. They bury it
down deep in
and hopefully it'll in containers that don't leak.
Supposedly,
yeah,
but it's got to last like hundreds of thousands of years.
Hundreds of thousands, longer than the Grand Canyon.
Of course, then Nevada becomes the waste pit for nuclear radioactive waste, and people in Nevada don't want to see trucks and trains full of radioactive material being shipped to their state.
Or have it stored in their state.
They don't want it in their state, right? Well, under Obama basically listened to them and said, we need to come up with something better. So they basically defunded the Yucca Mountain. But now Trump has started it up again, and he's going, well, we got to put this stuff somewhere.
Yeah.
But while he was stumping for Dirty Dean Heller he said, oh, well, we really should work with the people here, and gee whiz.
Do what the people want.
He says, I would be very inclined to be against it. That's his quote.
How about that?
Isn't that nice? He's reconsidering, right? Then Rick Perry, his dim-witted energy secretary, turned around and accidentally told the truth and said, "Oh no, Trump wants to move ahead with it. He put $120 million in my budget for that."
So he little misspeaking there.
Angering people in Nevada when they learned that story.
Well, and since Trump is campaigning with Dirty Dean Heller, perhaps people will make the connection that if Dirty Dean gets in, then we're going to have nuclear waste stored in our state.
I think it was pretty evident.
Good.
So hopefully that'll toss the race to the person running against Dean Heller.
Yeah, because Dirty Dean Heller is a Trump devotee and rubber stamps whatever Trump wants to do.
Exactly.
Gee whiz. Yeah. Okay, so Matt, it's a bad week for snacking after a wild brawl erupted in a Swedish concert hall during a performance of Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 5. The flashpoint was a concert goer loudly rustling a bag of candy during the symphony's tear-jerking fourth movement, Adagietto.
I hate that when that happens.
Yeah, but would you come to fists? Will you throw fists over that?
Well,
maybe.
I mean, if it's a very emotionally high point.
Depends on the candy for me and whether he shared it.
Depends on how loud. If you just keep crinkling it. You gotta show some
hate that crinkling.
Respect for your fellow concert goers.
Right, and also for Gustav Mahler. I mean, what did he ever do to him?
Gustav Mahler fans are known to be violent, Jim.
Yeah, that's true. I think Gustav
they'll
actually
snap at the crackle of a bag.
Fist punch.
That's right,
Snapple at the crack of a bag. They will.
That's right. Don't you maul my Mahler, pal.
Oh, man, that's really bad.
No, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully the next time the candy eater will show a little bit more respect and restraint.
Maybe so. Open the bag first and just chew gummy things.
Really, they could just bring cookies or something.
Not even all.
True, they
just
could wait
before.
Maybe it was somebody who was dragged along by their spouse who's a big fan.
Could be a child. We don't know.
And maybe it was a form of protest.
Yeah, maybe they hated Mahler.
Maybe so.
Maybe they switched the venue at the last minute.
Maybe they're a Mozart fan.
That could be.
Or an AC/DC fan.
There we go. Almost comparable.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so, Jim, back to the Tangerine Turd,
our friend.
He insists on using his iPhones to do his tweeting and calling of his buddies and stuff.
The unsecured iPhones.
The unsecured iPhone.
Right.
So it turns out that China and Russia, listen in on this apparently on a regular basis
to figure out how they can get him to do their bidding.
And then one of the there was one of Trump's right-wing buddies, a business person or something, gets approached by the Chinese and, hey, put this bug in his ear, and he does. He's, well, I'm happy to be an intermediate. But in the meantime, it's like, well, wait a minute, if that's unsecure, that guy's got a mouth that won't shut.
Yes.
Is he talking state secrets? Well,
he already did.
He probably he probably doesn't even know what a state secret is.
Or he just brags.
But really, the bottom line is it makes all this hypocritical talk about Hillary Clinton's email server.
Her email server that was unsecure.
Pale in comparison.
Well, remember when President Obama had his BlackBerry and he loved that phone, and yet he was forced to give it up. To give it up. No one's forcing Trump to do anything.
Yeah, and for the good of the country,
right.
Obama happily did that, right?
Yes, well, he complained, but he did do it. That's the bottom line.
That's the whole thing. I mean, Trump. So, I mean, this is where he's constantly just spouting stuff that is stupid and crazy and destructive and brutal. And he's got the White House staff, the Pentagon, the intelligence community suddenly go, oh, damage control. What do we do about that now?
Right. It's right. It's crisis control after it's something. He does something, says something, or does something.
Yeah, and so, it's like...
There's no forethought.
But this is why even Republicans should vote for Democrats in this midterm election, because if the Republicans keep the House and the Senate, Trump is just going to be unleashed. You think this is bad we've seen in these 2 years? It's horrible. It's going to get a lot worse.
Matt, he thinks that he has a mandate, even though he lost the popular election.
Right.
So imagine if there is a red wave and the blue wave doesn't happen or is subsumed by the red wave.
Right.
Then Trump is going to – it's right. He's going to be like release the Kraken.
Yeah.
It's going to be a total
And even if it's another stolen election like the last one, he'll justify it and claim that he's got a mandate.
He's got a mandate. Another mandate. A bigger mandate.
Yeah. A mandate to murder innocent people and go after his enemies and treat this country like another banana republic like the Philippines.
Dismantle everything. Everything we hold dear.
Yeah.
Speaking of holding dear, what's happening in Brazil? Holy cow.
Yeah, this is an ugly trend.
Bolsonaro. Either way, this is he vowed in hold on, let me get this. He had a menacing speech last week that if elected, he would purge leftist rivals. Either they go overseas or they go to jail, he said. These red outlaws will be banished from our homeland. It will be a cleanup, the likes of which has never been seen in Brazilian history.
He was also quoted saying that they either, self-exile or be exterminated.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he also said that if his son were gay, he'd rather have him be dead than be gay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, now, so this is a really terrible turn of events because, of course, heretofore, Brazil's the biggest economy and country in South America.
Sure. It's
and
gigantic.
Brazilian people are known to be very, kind, generous, and tolerant people.
And open, and very open.
And so why are they electing a crypto Nazi? Well, in part because it has become a very a corrupted country.
Right.
Now, it's corrupted, not just economically, but politically.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've seen in the last few years, so Lula, the previous president, basically was prevented from running again. Probably the most popular politician in the country, but because their Congress is corrupted and their courts are corrupted, they got their courts to say, to convict him on, a so-called minor corruption charge, put him in jail, and then say he couldn't run again. Now, Dilma, the woman who succeeded him, also pretty progressive. The Congress got her tossed out,
booted out, right?
On a technicality that basically was, well, you did some fundraising or something at the wrong time. It was a very obscure little point, and it was just a power play, and they got rid of her. Yeah. So they eliminated the strongest candidates of opposition.
Absolutely.
Now, this guy Bolsonaro, while he was campaigning, somebody attacked him and stabbed him, slit him up pretty good. He survived, and that generated some sympathy for him.
Sort of like a martyr sympathy.
You have to look at the country. It's got the most deadly police force of any country in the world. Huge numbers of people get killed by their police force.
They also say that the business leaders were behind a campaign to bombard users of WhatsApp, Brazil's most popular social media platform, with fake news about Fernando Haddad, the leftist candidate, who faced Bolsonaro in the runoff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so they use social media as well.
And then he picked up
jailing
support from the very conservative aspects of the religious structure and the elitist economy.
And they also say there's a nostalgia for the old dictatorship.
Well, and what I was getting to was that because there's this amount of corruption, whereas the people are tolerant by nature, they are frustrated with the conditions in the country.
Right.
And so this is like, one more grab at a straw, like the people who elected Trump here, but for a person who sounds even worse.
Oh, he's
than
terrible.
Trump.
There's also, Matt, a projection that he actually has the fate of the entire world in his hands because Brazil, of course, has the rainforests, which are the lungs of the planet.
Critical to the environment.
Absolutely. He is intending to go in and develop the rainforest, chop down the trees, search for natural gas and coal and whatever
and raise cattle. Yeah.
Right, raise cattle. So
in
that's
other words, a terrible idea.
Ruin the trees.
Yeah.
Ruin our
and the rainforest has been, depleted and damaged severely enough.
Illegally.
Yeah,
right?
Mostly illegally. But for him to support that is really crazy stupid.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like, the analogy of, the lobster in the pot, you turn the pot, you put it in the cold water
and then turn the
heat up and slowly, and versus dropping it in the hot water. Yeah. Well, this is kind of like, if Trump or Bolsonaro were the lobster, they're reaching out and turning up the flames.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I like lobster though. Lobster's good.
Yeah, well.
So, Matt, if Canada has legalized marijuana use nationwide, but South Korea is a little bit perturbed by that, and they're saying that any South Koreans who go to Canada as tourists, if they have post any pictures on social media of themselves toking up, they said that they would actually prosecute those people.
South Korea said
that. So if you're South Korean and you go to Canada and you have a picture
I see.
On social media of the picture of you smoking dope, South Korean, and when you go back, they will prosecute you. And Japan is doing the same type of thing. They're asking the Japanese nationals in Canada to respect Japanese law and eschew marijuana. Doesn't mean to chew it. It means not
to stay away from it.
Yeah.
Well, don't take pictures, no selfies with a reefer.
No. Pass that reefer on. Don't bogart that joint.
A couple little shining lights here. So the NRA, the National Rifle Association, is spending about a little less than half what they did 4 years ago in the midterms.
I love that.
That is good news.
Yeah.
Well, of course, some some a-hole with an automatic weapon slaughtered 11 Jews in their synagogue. I mean,
AK-15.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, so maybe they're just trying to lay low till they get their way again. But
they don't need to spend money. The guns are already there.
Well, that's true, and they spend it on politicians, of course.
Yeah.
But the majority of people really do want stronger gun control laws, and so I think they're and people who are fighting the lax laws have gotten more organized and better funding, and so there's more opposition to
thanks
the NRA.
Largely, I think, to the people the survivors of the Parkland shooting. These kids are amazing what they're doing.
And all the other ones.
Raising awareness. And they're saying we're not anti-gun ownership, but we want responsible gun ownership.
Yeah. Here's another bit, Jim. So Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of the Interior, another horrible swamp dweller, is facing a number of federal probes. The Interior's Inspector General has been pursuing some investigations, and one of them he's turned over to the Department of Justice for possible criminal investigation and prosecution. Let's hope so, because this is a guy who's Bears Ears, National Monument, they reduced by 85%, and the Grand Escalante staircase, etc.
That's right.
Just to open them up for drilling and mining and all kinds of stuff.
That's right.
Well, of course, one of the companies that is doing a lot of drilling and mining on
would it be Halliburton?
It'd be Halliburton, yes. Mm-hmm. And apparently there was a land deal done in Montana by Zinke's wife in an organization she runs with the a development group headed by Halliburton's chairman. And so, this looks like it could be a significant conflict of interest. Let's hope the Department of Justice that there are some still legitimate people in there that want to see the laws maintained and go after him.
You know what? I hope
violations.
So. And he's almost breaking Pruitt's record. Right?
I was just going to say. I mean, think of all the rat people that Trump has put into positions of power, where they just abuse it and let the people that they're supposed to be supervising and preventing from committing crimes just let them go wild.
He appoints people who hate the department, what they represent.
Yeah.
I wonder whether, since Pruitt has left, whether the lawsuits are still pending and whether he still can be held accountable, or whether it's only while he was in office.
Well, that's a good question. It's gone quiet. We don't know. I'd like to see that be pursued.
But it may not be dead. It may be just bubbling like Mueller's thing.
It may be.
So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, that lovely
despicable
guy, and his wife, also lovely.
Horrible
she was the Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, were heckled by several protesters last week while eating at a popular Cuban restaurant. This is in Louisville, Kentucky. One woman approached their booth and called McConnell a traitor, prompting Chao to tell the hecklers to leave them alone. Chao also confronted hecklers before. A man later came over, took McConnell's to-go box, and dumped the food on the sidewalk. A spokesman for McConnell, who has been confronted at restaurants multiple times this year, said McConnell and Chao, quote, hope other patrons weren't too inconvenienced by left-wing tantrums. But also earlier this week, Nancy Pelosi...
Yeah, she was heckled.
And she was. She arrived at the campaign event in Coral Gables, Florida, and this person came up and said, you don't belong here, you effing communist F. One person yelled. After Pelosi wordlessly entered a building, the small crowd began chanting, socialism sucks.
Well, a small crowd. Yeah, there you go.
They didn't say lock her up.
I mean, this goes back to 2000 when the white collar rioters in Florida stopped the vote and flipped the presidency to George W. Bush.
The hanging chad.
Of course, the Republicans are like, and Trump is like, the violent mobs. Well, they accuse Kavanaugh of being guilty, and and yet. Who do we see? So who's mailing off the bombs? Who's pulling the trigger?
That's right.
The right wing. The guy let's say, which guy had the van taken away? Was he the bomber?
He was the bomber.
Yeah. So the van was covered with stickers, Hillary and the crosshairs of a rifle sight.
And Trump said, "I don't know. I didn't see my picture on that van."
Yeah, his picture was all over.
It was all over the van.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a difference between heckling people and confronting them for their ill deeds in a public space and pulling a trigger or, making a bomb.
So just 25% of Americans believe that Brett Kavanaugh was telling the entire truth during his testimony in the Supreme Court confirmation hearing. 39% think Kavanaugh was mostly honest but hiding something. And 31% believe he was mostly lying. I'm surprised it was that low. 77% of Republicans approved of his confirmation, while 74% of Democrats disapproved.
Yeah.
48% of voters under 30 say it really matters which it really matters which party controls Congress. 83% of voters 65 and older say it really matters. That's us.
That's us.
We're part of the 83%.
Whatever that percentage, it really does matter.
It matters, man.
Things are getting kind of weird in the European Union.
Well, how's
too.
that?
Well, because Angela Merkel is not going to run again, and she's,
My
she's
heart
been.
breaks for Angela.
Well, I've never had great love for her because she's quite conservative.
Yeah,
and
she didn't let the refugees come in.
She did, and she has held the European Union together through a lot of difficult times. Now, keep in mind, though, Germany and their finance minister, with her support, were the ones that imposed austerity on Greece.
Greece and Italy and also
tried
Spain.
Tried to do Portugal.
Portugal said no.
Yeah. And but Greece and Spain have paid a huge high price.
They have.
And some of that has pushed people towards the nationalist, populist right-wing movements. Now, so she's not going to run for another term. Her term ends in 2020, but she may not last that long because she's likely to be ousted as her party's leader, which is different from her government leader position. Now. There's things going on. So Italy's now got a right-wing government.
Right.
They submitted a budget. So all the countries in the European Union have to adhere to certain rules on their budgets.
Okay.
What risk they can take, how much they can leverage funding and stuff.
That's part of the
bonding, etc.
The austerity thing to get that back in balance.
Well, even before that, they have rules for how what the limits to how they can run their economies.
Got it.
So Italy's budget, just submitted to the EU, has been rejected because they're trying to. Well, and it's weird because this is so they've got a right-wing government, but partly they're saying, you're rejecting our budget because we want to keep paying pensions and retirement to people and employ people, which is a smart move on their part.
Yeah.
That is what a government should be doing.
Yeah.
And yet they're running up against the conservative economic limitations of the EU. Mm-hmm. And so now it's going to become a power struggle and a potential that the union could be threatened.
Just like the pension people here. The people who have pensions here, it's always people are complaining, I don't want to. In fact, reading newspaper letters to the editor saying, I don't want to pay any more taxes because it only goes to pensions.
Right.
Keep going.
Okay, but pensions are legitimate, and people who've earned them are deserve them.
Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's this power struggle, they're saying they're looking to Macron, the president of France, as the next person who's got the most legitimacy, but he's not popular in France.
No, he's not.
He's a conservative business guy. The French people are more liberal. He doesn't have the
such hope.
The stern, discipline that Merkel has had. I guess.
She's German.
So it's going to be, we're going to have to watch that because, if the European Union falls apart,
it's going to be chaos,
you've got really ugly trends going on there in Hungary, Poland,
and Brexit too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, and Brexit. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all a mess.
That's
good time to travel.
Something to, I did think she was right about letting in the million refugees.
Yeah, me too.
But that really angered a lot of the smaller countries because they were afraid that they were going to get overrun. She was trying to do it equitably.
In Greece. It was pretty crazy. It was like on Greece, the island of Lesbos.
Because that was physically where people were arriving.
Correct. And unbidden, they would just come across the Mediterranean and land.
And of course, many of them coming from Syria, which has had this horrible war going on for
places in
10
North
years,
Africa,
and places that have been severely impacted by drought and other environmental catastrophes.
That's right.
So there's this huge disruption.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Matt, this is something that's been under the radar. It's just now starting to come up. Since 2004, between 300 and 700 barrels of oil per day have been leaking from the site of an oil production platform 12 miles off the Louisiana coast that sank in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan.
Yes.
The oil spill, which officials estimate could continue throughout this century, is on pace to overtake the 2010 BP Deepwater Horizon disaster as the largest ever, but there are currently no efforts to cap the many leaking wells.
That's right.
Horrible.
And in fact, the company who owns that is in a lawsuit with the Interior Department to try to get out of the bond, the $45 million or $1 billion, but whatever it is, bond that they put up in case of an accident.
In case of an accident. Oh, it's a mess. Apparently, underwater, there was mudslides that slid over the wells, so they can't really find them. And it's just leaking up through the mud. So there are all these different wells that are not capped and just leaking all these barrels of oil.
Not good.
No, and it's going to be worse than
And where is that located?
This is in the Gulf of of Mexico.
Yeah.
Just near the Deepwater Horizon.
Well, so, that's going to impact fisheries, shrimperies, all kinds of things.
Louisiana coast. So it's close enough in, probably.
Yeah.
So, the beaches might be soiled. Who knows?
Very bad news, Jim.
Very bad.
All right. Let me give you a couple good bits here.
Right. Yeah,
before
thank
we
you.
finish
Please.
up here in our last couple minutes.
Sounds good.
So thousands of Google employees have walked out briefly
that.
yesterday to protest the easy treatment of people accused of sexual misconduct.
Good for them.
There was one guy, now this goes back to 2014, who got a multi-billion-dollar payout.
$90 million.
He was one, I forget.
Maybe $70 million.
It was some platform that was purchased by Google. And anyway, but what they were also protesting was unequal pay, between men and women, people, and they were protesting a lack of diversity with women and people of color because, Google is still mostly, white guys, with a smattering of Asians, right?
Yeah, right.
So they protested in Tokyo, Singapore, London, New York City, San Francisco, Seattle.
All their world campuses.
And they were saying, don't be evil.
Which is what their original motto was.
That's right. So good for them. So,
yes.
And they were saying, we're a pioneer company. If we don't do that, who's going to do it?
Who's going to do it?
So they really did the right thing.
What about Finland? You have something really
one last thing here.
Yeah, let's do that one.
So Finland, yesterday, November 1st, every day is Jealousy Day.
What does that mean?
They release everybody's tax returns.
Oh,
everybody
baby.
knows
Look out.
what everybody is paying.
I know how much you make.
Yeah, so it's like they laughingly call it Jealousy Day. But what it's done over time is it's actually helped close disparities in pay.
Don't you like that?
I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
And then they found out things like certain corporate executives were actually. They were actually, moving their headquarters or their
like some of their slush funds, their offshore
their company
accounts.
headquarters to like Portugal, so they wouldn't have to pay taxes. And so now those people have been caught, and their legislators have closed that gap.
And speaking of closing a gap, is it time to close this gap?
Well, it's getting close to that time, Jim. This has been Two Mooks and a Mic.
Yeah,
folks,
guys,
thanks
thank
for
you so much for
tuning in.
listening. Appreciate it.
Next week, it's going to be One Mook and a Mic again.
I'm going to be on assignment.
Jim's going to be on assignment.
Yeah, we'll tell you about that when we come back after that.
Where's he going, folks?
I'm not telling.
All right, we'll find out later.
If it's Jealousy Day, I'll let you know.
That's right. But thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
We appreciate
Thanks
your
for all
ears.
the calls. We appreciate those too.
And till next week, it's Two Mooks. Take care.
Two Mooks and a Mic.